National Semiconductor. And while I was there, I found out that engineers engineered microchips, things like that. So I was like, what do you have to do to, be an engineer, electrical? And they said, oh, you have to be pretty good at math. I was like, I've always been good with electronics and things like that. So that's where I started. So that's when I started going to school, and that's what I decided to do, become an electrical engineer. I moved back here to Harrisburg. I went to HAC for quite a while because I worked full time and went to school. And then I finished at Penn State. I was an engineer for a year, didn't really like my job. So it was a little boring. And while I was there, I decided to apply to be a teacher. I don't know what made me do that, but a friend of mine, actually it was Tiffany's brother, who got me an interview at Harrisburg High. I was like, I do not want to teach math. I don't want to, And he got me this interview at Harrisburg High, and the principal hired me in the interview. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to go to the other engineering interview, and I decided to just stick with it. So I really like it. And then some of my professors from Penn State, so the engineers at Penn State and some of the math professors at HAC asked me to teach there. So that's how I ended up teaching as a professor. And I really like it. I've also had some robotics clubs and some STEM clubs for students. Some of them have won robotics competitions at Penn State. So I'm trying to continue to do that. And like Tiffany said, I also teach yoga and pyro, and I dance. Actually, I have to leave here soon because I gotta go to tap class. So I still dance and stuff. And that's pretty much, I summed it up pretty quick. Okay.
I'm sure she already introduced me, but I'm also here from Harrisburg, born and raised, went to Susquehanna Township schools. So at first I went to IUP, which is Indiana University of Pennsylvania, to get a biology degree. What I wanted to do first was be a forensic biologist. Until, getting into some chemistry classes, and honestly, like, if you get a headache, you take Tylenol. It's like, oh, well, what is it doing in your body? So that's what got me interested in pharmacy and got me to leave, like, my forensic biologist initial dream. And so I actually graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Biology, and then came back here, took a couple years off, worked in a pharmacy, went back to pharmacy school. I went to Mercer University, where I got my doctorate of pharmacy, Mercer is in Atlanta, Georgia. Then I came back to Pennsylvania and did a PGY1, which is the 1-year residency, a pharmacy residency. And then after that, came back to Harrisburg, where it all started. Actually, I worked down at Harrisburg Hospital mainly with UPMC Pinnacle, where I was born. So literally where it all started.
Nice to meet you all. Yes. Hi everyone, my name is Judith Paulius. I am a family physician. I was born and raised in New Jersey as well. Did all my schooling there up until college. In high school, I had a real big interest in biology. I think it started with my biology teacher who was very engaging and who absolutely loved to teach. And so once you get a teacher that loves what they do, you can't help but get sucked into it as well. And so after going through that class, I realized, I wanted to major in biology. Going to medicine didn't start totally for me until I hit college, and I majored in biology, got involved in a group called SNMA, which is a Student National Medical Association, which is basically a club for minority students who are interested in medicine. And by going through that group and visiting different medical schools, learning more about medicine, it got me more interested in going into pursuing medicine. And so I got my bachelor's degree in biology, initially applied to med school, did not get in. And it was a big hit for me because, from elementary school to middle school to high school to college, I had good grades. I, did a lot of community service, did a lot of things that I thought that would get me in, but that darn MCAT test got me. And so right after I graduated, I was out, I didn't have anywhere to go basically. And so a friend of mine told me about an agency that hires people with biology degrees. And so for about a year and a half, I worked for a pharmaceutical company. It was mostly like a but I still had my eye on school, and my parents definitely did not let me forget that I still had schooling to do pretty much every day. Because they were concerned that once you start getting money, you're gonna give up and not want to go to school. And so they really, really pushed me. And so I applied again, did not get in. And so I came to a point where I almost gave it up because it is very expensive applying to different schools and trying to get to med school. But before I ended up giving up, a friend of mine told me about a summer program out in Ohio where it's 1 month of like medical school type classes, and if you do well, there's a possibility of having an opportunity to interview for the medical school. And so I quit my job, moved to Ohio, did the 1 month summer program, did well, but I did not get in directly. I had to take the MCAT yet again. But I had a high enough score to, apply for the post-baccalaureate program that they do offer there, which is 1 year of more medical type classes. And so if you have to keep a certain GPA for you to get automatic admission, and that's the route I went to. So did well, and I got into med school that way. And so I did my training there. So med school, in order to get into become a doctor, you need 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, and then for me it was 3 years of residency for family medicine. And so I did my med school and my residency out in Ohio and came back to Pennsylvania because my parents, somewhere in the middle, moved to the Pocono area. And so it's closer to home for me. And so I actually live and work in York County, Pennsylvania. And so I started August of last year officially as a family physician. Family physicians, they see all ages, from babies to the elderly, and we see a variety of different medical illnesses. We don't, if there's something that's going on with a patient, let's say they have a heart problem, there's only so much we can do before we need to refer to a specialist so that they can get closer care, but we pretty much do everything. And so I was attracted to being able to know how to manage a lot of different conditions because I like learning. I love learning. I love learning a lot about different things, different topics. And so family medicine definitely has that hodgepodge of things to keep me interested and help me stay sharp on a lot of different things. So that's my story.
Hi everyone, my name is Nyla Jackson, and like she said, I'm a cosmetologist. I was born and raised here in Harrisburg. I went to William Penn High School, no longer William Penn anymore. That's where I got my cosmetology start. 10th grade, I got all my 1,250 hours before I even graduated high school. My teacher saw that I was interested in doing it, being creative and staying after, working the shop floor after school. And she agreed to pay for me to take my state board. So got my state board license before I graduated from high school, and here I am doing hair for over 21 years.
Oh, nice.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Gina Charles. I was born in the Caribbean and partially raised in the Caribbean. I was exposed to medicine at an early age. I was raised by one of my aunts who was a nurse in the operating room. So because they didn't really have a babysitter for me, they brought me to work and I would just sit in the operating room every day. So I was just exposed to scrubs at 3 years old, going up and down. Emigrated to the United States when I was 5 and grew up in Harlem, New York. While I was living in Harlem, I went to Manhattan Center High School where there was a program called Mount Sinai Scholars. Basically, it's like a STEM program for people who want to become a physician. I knew from being in the OR at the age of 3 that I wanted to become a physician. Just being in that environment, I loved it, and I didn't really know anything else. Being in the Mount Sinai program, I was exposed to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City for several years. I spent my summers working in an adolescent health clinic, and I saw myself doing this. I said, oh my gosh, you know, I'm gonna become a doctor, and I'm gonna come back to Harlem, and I'm gonna work at this clinic, and I'm gonna see all the girls and young ladies. That was my plan. So I ended up going to Stony Brook University in New York, and I knew I didn't want to major in science because part of me felt like there's so much more than science. So I majored in Africana Studies because I wanted to learn more about Black history and African history, so that was my major. And my minor was health sciences. I got my first C in biology in my sophomore year of college, and the guidance counselor told me, okay, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to med school. She said, well, you need to rethink this with this C. I said, okay, thank you. Right? Close that door. Moving along, finished Stony Brook University. I hadn't taken some of my science courses, moved back home to my mom's house, and I said, you know, well, one, I need a job, and two, I need to take my science courses so that I can get into med school. So there were 2 positions open at a hospital in New York. One was New York Hospital, one was Hospital for Special Surgery. I went to the interview at New York Hospital, and it was an OB-GYN, and he did like infertility. He helped women who had issues with getting pregnant. I said, oh, this will be nice. But he was on vacation, so I didn't meet him. I met his secretary. And then I went on the other interview with an African surgeon, and he heard my story, he heard where I was from, he heard what I majored in, and he said, okay, so you're gonna work for me. I said, well, I got this other interview, I got this other job lined up that I really, really want. The African surgeon was a spine doctor. What am I gonna learn about bones? I didn't want to do anything with bones. I knew I was gonna work at the clinic with the adolescent girls, that plan. I ended up taking the job with the spine doctor. That was one of the best decisions of my life because he saw something in me that the guidance counselor didn't see. He saw potential. A lot of times we want to do something in life and people are going to tell us no. The guidance counselor wasn't the first person to tell me that I wasn't going to become a physician. I knew that my path was going to be difficult because, the C in biology and the C in chemistry too. Chemistry 1, there was also a C in that. So he said, you know what? You can talk and you have talent. You're gonna go to med school. Forget about the C's. You're gonna go. Okay? 5 months later, Gina, we're gonna go to Africa. What? Okay. So I ended up working in Africa for 3 years, going back and forth between the United States and Africa and doing research for him. He ended up being on Discovery Channel, opening a hospital, and I was basically his right-hand man, gopher. Anything you want to do, I'm doing it. I'm doing research at night, studying, doing research. Took my science courses, ended up with a 3.9 GPA. I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do this in college, but after college you get out and look at what happens, yay. So I took the MCAT, that dreaded MCAT. So I took the MCAT like a week after my grandfather passed away. Everyone told me not to take it, but I was like, I'm good, I'll take it. I studied, I bombed the MCAT. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? Well, let me just go back to Africa. So went back doing work, and then 3 years passed, and I said, I really have to shake things up. So one of my teachers in the program that was in doing the science courses, he told me about the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, and he said they have a graduate program. You can continue taking science courses and get a master's. That's going to strengthen your science skill set so that you can be ready for that MCAT. So I left my job, I left my family in New York, and I moved to Jersey. I ended up taking the MCAT. That was the last paper MCAT. Did you take the paper test?
No.
Okay. See, I'm aging myself. So that was the last paper MCAT. And I applied to medical school the first year of my master's. I did not get into medical school. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what else do I have to do? I spoke to my former boss, and he's like, you have another year of your master's. just continue doing what you're doing. And while I was doing the courses for my master's, I was also very active with my friend who was a makeup artist. So I was making money on the side doing bridal makeup with her as her assistant. And I just let myself go. Instead of worrying about this test, I kid you not, I walk into the test and I'm like, okay, it's computerized, we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna go across the street to Madison Square Garden and celebrate. Because I took it at 34th Street. I took the exam, I did okay on the exam. Spoke to my boss, he's like, you're not taking it again. I'm like, I know I'm not taking it again. Let me apply to medical school again. I applied to 3 medical schools. I got 2 interviews. Both times, they looked at my resume. They didn't care what my scores were. They didn't care about the C's. The one thing they wanted to know, how is it that you, this girl from the Caribbean, who grew up in Harlem, got to do so much research and travel across the world, come back and sit in front of me? So that's what we spoke about on the interview. So I tell you my story to say that when my boss said, you can talk and you have talent, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And if you really want to get somewhere, just know that it's okay to not have the perfect grade. You can still get there, okay? Granted, when I went back, I got the 3.9, but I had so many other things going for me besides that, So there were other things to talk about. We spoke about my dance career, crocheting, and doing makeup, So I ended up going to medical school in New Jersey, and I knew that I wanted to work at a clinic. So I applied for residency. I got into a residency in Pinnacle in Harrisburg, so that's how I ended up coming out here. My first job out of residency was actually in a clinic in Steelton. It was like a private practice. I worked there for 1.5 years. I actually left it last year after having my daughter, the little troublemaker that you saw running around, so I could spend more time with her and just focus on being a mom, because that was also important to me. So right now I'm still doing family medicine. I'm working in urgent care. I'm still doing makeup, and I opened a med spa where I'm doing skincare, and I'm still doing several things outside of medicine, because one thing I have learned is you are more than your white coat. That's my story.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions on the note card? Anybody have any questions? Oh, you have one? Do you have a question?
Oh, no,
Oh, yes.
I'll make a comment. Just along with what Dr. Charles have been talking about, and just from my own background, there was a lot of twisty-turn, curvy ways of getting to where we are now. Don't let that scare you, or don't let that discourage you. Everyone has their own path to take. Just because, we had, paths like this doesn't mean that's gonna be the way for you, but at least you hear that it's not the end of the road. Because I applied to medical school a couple times, Dr. Charles did as well. Took the MCAT a couple times, and the norm, expected norm is you go to high school, you go to college, you take the MCAT, you pass it, and you go straight into med school. More and more, that's not people's stories. And so, you find ways to be more than medicine, like she was saying. You find your passions, and you find ways to make it happen as well for you. So I just encourage anyone here who's like, man, I didn't know it was all that. Just don't let that turn you off, but let it actually be a strength, so that you can pick up a lot of things along the way.
That's why we're all here.
I wanted to add that also math and science is the key to the universe. If you know math and science, you know everything that's going on in the universe. I mean, really, you're a better driver, I think, if you're really good at math, but that's just my opinion.
No matter what career you're going into, whether any of our careers that we have up here, always remember to have a mentor, and you can have more than one mentor. A mentor is somebody that guides you and gives you advice, and helps you along the way. You can have one mentor, you can have 10 mentors. Try to have a mentor along the way. They will help you and they will help to guide you and push you along, so that's important.